Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Aayush Soni. Today we'll be doing something different. We'll be reviewing books. Today's book is Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey. And I know this is the correct pronunciation because I just googled it. So, Matthew McConaughey, Greenlights. So let's just get into it. So the primary idea of the book Greenlights is catching these moments in your life, which are like the perfect positive moments. McConaughey calls green lights. And he says the moments that you feel are not really great, those are the red lights, and these red lights eventually turn into green lights. So, what he's trying to say is the negative moments in your life eventually turn into positive outcomes, and those are the green lights. Catching green lights and waiting for the red lights to turn green is how McConaughey lives his life. And green lights here are the events in your life that turn it around for the good. There will be red lights in your life where you will feel lost and you won't know what to do. But those red lights will eventually turn into green lights. And that is the whole idea of his book. McConaughey shares some really great and wild adventures he experienced in his life. He shares in this book, and it's basically like a memoir to all those adventures and all the things that he lived through. He gives us the lessons that he learned along with these experiences, along with these wild adventures that he experienced. So now first let's talk about the things that I liked about the book. So first of all, the blunt honesty in the book. Like, he just opens his heart out. He doesn't try to hide anything. It's like reading through Matthew McConaughey. He mentions how he watched his elder brothers turn into a man by these tests his dad used to give him. And when his time came to give the test by his dad and be a man, he had miserably failed. But he later proved to his dad that he is a man, and he shocked his dad, honestly. He also mentioned his first trip to Australia when he was 19. He was 18, 19 years old, right after his high school, which was a semester exchange program, and the lessons he learned there, how he learned to stand up for himself, which helped him find better people along the way during his stay in Australia. Overall, he just did what he loved and was honest about what he did. He mentions this verse, half-assing, which is doing something and just leaving it undone, doing it half and undone. Initially, he went to law school, but then he didn't like it at law school, so he eventually left law school and then he went to film school to pursue his actor journey. But even though he dropped out of law school, didn't really leave him because his entire life, his family was in need of advocates, or he played a role of being an advocate. So law didn't really leave him even though he left law. He talks about these tactics and tricks he used to survive in the competitive field of Hollywood and get the role he desired. So one of the things that he mentions in this book is about planting the seed, which is so where he would make it really clear to the director what he wanted, like which role he wanted and what he wanted to do. And the director would first be skeptical about giving the role, but eventually, weeks or months later, he would get that role. The director would come to him and get that role. So he called this trick or this process of getting what he desired called planting the seed. And he mentioned some personal anecdotes he experienced when he first time got fame from everyone after his first blockbuster movie. His mom tried to get a slice of his fame by inviting the media people to his childhood house, and Matthew McConaughey did not like that. So he stopped talking to his mom for 8 full years. He later forgave her and things sorted out. But this was something that was really personal to him that he mentioned. Reading the book was like talking to a close friend, sharing all his miseries, fun adventures, and all of that sorts of thing. And the writing style is so casual. It's like talking to a very old, close friend. Okay, another thing in this book, he talks about this crazy phenomenon that he mentions. And I was stunned after reading about it. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And he experienced the same phenomena twice in his life. So in this phenomena, he dreams about being in a place and he would eventually wake up and it would be a wet dream. And he saw this as a sign to actually go to the place. And what he would do after waking up is that he would open his map. He would try to locate the place where he saw the dream at. Like at one instance, it was the Amazon River. And in another instance, it was some place in Africa. So he saw dreams like that about being in those places, and he mapped it out, and he eventually went there. So he saw these as signs by the universe trying to tell him something. And according to him, every time he went to one of these places, he had an epiphany and he had a realization and he had a different outlook on life after being in those spaces. He calls this catching his wet dream, which is really funny because it's usually catching the dream, but here he's catching the wet dream, which is a very humorous aspect that he put into his book. At one time, famous for doing rom-coms, and he was getting offers of a lot of rom-coms from everywhere, and he was getting hefty checks for that. But he was sick of doing these rom-coms again and again. He wanted to do something serious, something special, something that meant something to him. And rom-coms didn't really sum it up. So what he did is, for a long period of time, he kept rejecting these rom-coms that he was getting, even though he was getting paid hefty checks, like in millions, like 8 millions. He was rejecting those kind of paychecks. He wanted to be in a serious acting role. And he calls this part of his life surviving the storm. He calls this a storm because he didn't do a job. He was just spending time with his family, friends, going out for dinner. He wasn't doing any acting roles, even though he was getting them, but he didn't want to do rom-coms. And he finally survived the storm of not doing rom-coms when he got his first movie, which was a serious role. And it's actually funny, he got 3 serious roles that he really wanted to do, and he did all 3 of them at the same time. I remember reading this sentence of his. He said that his agent was trying to tell him that it would be very hectic to do 3 movies at the same time, which are not rom-coms. And McConaughey said to that, I am telling you, I'm not asking you. So he knew what he was going in for, and he went for it. He didn't let his agent influence his decisions. So surviving that storm of not doing rom-coms really worked out for the good in the end for him. Okay, now let's come to the dislikes of this book. Most of you won't agree with me. Interstellar is one of my most favorite movies ever made. McConaughey is one of the actors in that, as most of you already know, but he doesn't really talk about it much. He just mentions one line in which he just says, I acted in Interstellar. He doesn't really, talk about it more. And that was kind of disappointing because he didn't talk about my favorite film and he was the actor in it. But of course, that is not a reason to dislike a book. I have other reasons. Now, another thing is, okay, let's be honest. Matthew McConaughey, he was a white man in the United States from an upper middle class family. And to be honest, he did have an unfair advantage over the others. So while flipping through the pages, I really enjoyed his stories, I really enjoyed his adventures and what all he went through. But after I finished the book, I didn't feel inspired. If you read about Mahatma Gandhi, if you read about Nelson Mandela, you'll feel really inspired. But since Mukwege already had a silver spoon in his mouth, to some extent, I wasn't as inspired. So that is one of the downsides of the book. And I'm not trying to say that he didn't struggle in Hollywood or he didn't struggle in his life at all. Obviously, he struggled like all of us do here. But he had it easier, I would say. That is just my personal opinion. But honestly, his amazing storytelling skills and mixed up with the adventures that he has been through and how he describes them really makes up for that bridge, that gap. It really makes up for it. And he mentions about, finding love, getting his kids, and one of his main goals in life, like being a dad and all that. And those parts were kind of boring because I think it's everyone's goal to do that. It's not something different he did, So those parts were something really boring for me, and I couldn't really resonate at times with him. I couldn't really relate myself with him. So that was one of the downsides. So, reading this book is like talking to your cool uncle who has been through really crazy adventures and he tells you crazy stories all the time you meet him. But some aspects of him are boring, like kids, family, all that, the boring stuff. And that is what that is also seen in Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey. Okay, now my final remarks for this book. I wouldn't call this book a must read, but I personally resonate with this book to some extent because Matthew McConaughey has been journaling for over 30 years and I have also been journaling for the past 2-3 years. So that was something we had in common. So I could kind of resonate with where he is coming from and how he had to go read all those journals he wrote in these 30 years and finally sum it up to a book. So I was kind of getting where he's coming from. Totally pick this book up if you're an avid reader. And this book is also good for a beginner because of the casual language used. It's really easy to understand. All in all, it is not a bad book. I would give this book a 3.5 stars out of 5. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked my first ever book review on my YouTube channel. If you want more of these, like the video. Let me know down in the comments which other books you want me to read and give a review about. I would love to know about your favorite books, read them and maybe review them like this one. Thank you so much for watching. See ya next time.